This one. Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. Another beautiful day in the world of Bitcoin and everything else that's following in its wake. Some serious volatility yesterday, but all of it was gobbled up in basically an instant, and we've returned in many places to new highs from where we just were. So we're going to take a look at that today, but before we do, we're going to take a look at the in and outflow for the spot Bitcoin ETFs. As you can see, there's some serious movement in and out on the 4th. Over 500 million sold from GBTC, and on the third as well. No, this would be the first of the third month here. Another 600 million. So inflows have increased. Outflows have increased and inflows have actually gone somewhat stagnant, but we have such a very small amount of data here. But all of that was gobbled up quite quickly. Generally, when you see this type of stuff, we call it whale games, just the moving of markets. People call it manipulation, but it's really just buying and selling. It's designed to manipulate emotions. The markets are easy to manipulate. You just need enough money and they will always go up. It's effectively what we've seen in some of the economic world changes lately, is that as they print dollars, all asset prices will go up. I think inflation is generally misconstrued as, the costs of normal everyday goods are more expensive, as in comparison with the cost of all assets are more expensive, because people that have a lot of money are not buying 1,000 times more bread or water. They're usually buying nicer houses, cars, watches, or Bitcoin, better assets. And because of that, that's what we see. We see a dramatic rise in prices in most all assets at the moment. So back to Bitcoin here. Wow, on the 15-minute, let's go back out to the daily. Remember, we've been following this widening megaphone pattern from Jesse Livermore, which then is also compounded by understanding where we are in the Wyckoff accumulation schematics. We've seen our test, our SOS, our LPS, our final SOS and LPS phases, and now we are into the last of the SOS and LPS before we figure out what's going on. Now, I've been hoping that we would see another accumulation range similar to what we had back down here, where for approximately 236 days we were range bound between 24 to 30,000. I do suspect we are going to see at one point something similar to this, although again, I'm not going to wait for it. I'm not going to be stuck waiting around for it, because here, as we looked at in Bitcoin's previous movements, when we've broken out of the widening megaphone pattern, past 0.6 and 7, we basically just started the bull market. And there are reasons to believe that that might be the case from our friends over at Look Into Bitcoin today as well. I thought we'd look at this. It's been a little while. The Fear and Greed Index score. One of the things we had constantly talked about was the... Oh, that was weird. Still working. One of the things we'd previously talked about was emotion as the thing that's being manipulated more so than the price. When you buy and or sell an asset, you will move the price depending on how much the market maker has in stock. And if you have enough money, you can move the price of any asset if it's illiquid enough, basically straight up. So this is generally emotions we're dealing with. We are in a peak greed era with very small amounts of fear coming into the market. In fact, we've seen no red into the market here at all, and not the dark green super greedy, but I think we could get there, and maybe sooner than most of us would suspect. And that's what I have been talking about with this widening megaphone pattern, is that once the market starts to move, the market makers don't want anyone else to get on board with leverage or by buying, and they want to mark the price up as much as possible before they start their distribution and selling campaign. This comes as no surprise to anyone who's been in the markets long enough. That's what they do. They go up, they go down, but more importantly, they get accumulated by players that are looking to get a significant amount of these assets under their belt before they start their distribution campaign. So with Bitcoin into this final SOS and LPS potentially before we go into breakout mode, again, it would be amazing if we saw some type of reaccumulation here, but those have all been very short-lived. The previous one, which we thought was, or that was taking place here, we thought that might touch 36, couldn't even get down to 37,000 before breaking out here. But all of these have not been distribution; they've been reaccumulation. So even in this larger time frame here, we haven't seen an SOS and that's turned into an LPS, a reaccumulation phase. But if we go back and we look at what happened with Avalanche, we zoom out here on the 2-day, just as an example from a trade within the range. Ooh, this is not the Avalanche drawn up, but nonetheless, let's draw it up. It'll be a great point of reference. Remember, for Avalanche, we were following this beautiful falling wedge that was taking place over a few hundred days. Very tight range here effectively, but more importantly, it's the horizontal range that we want to keep an eye on, and that's what we saw here. We'll draw that out in green, and we'll just double down on the bottom of this range as well, because this is effectively where the bottom of the range took place. Boom. And the horizontal trading ranges always include a few pieces. We'll skip over some of that data because you should be doing your homework. And if you haven't done your homework, remember, go to arcanebear.com/private, because the disease of the average investor, myself included sometime, is over trading and trying to capitulate in and out of positions. The hardest thing, that's one of the hardest things to do is, hey, we're in a bull market. You can generally just get a position and try to stay in position for as long as possible. During the bull market cycle. The reason being is because you have these monsters like Fetch, who day over day have been in accumulation mode. So since Fetch's breakout of the first trading range videos we made there, it's up 600%. That's just crazy. So sometimes being in and then just staying in the position during the market cycle is the easiest and the most valuable way to play. Getting in and out of multiple positions sounds a lot harder. So with Bitcoin to take into account, down at the bottom here, what we are doing is so grateful to witness the very bottom of the reaccumulation range into the SOS and breakout pattern. But again, remembering we are in a scale invariant universe and that we are actually in a much larger reaccumulation range, which we can see has taken place for Bitcoin throughout all of its history. Top and bottom of the range, middle of the range reaccumulation, top and bottom of the range, middle of the range reaccumulation. So not drawn up perfectly here, but you kind of you should be able to get the idea. As a matter of fact, that there was actually a reaccumulation range that took place right here before SOS breakout, LPS, SOS, LPS. And look, once we get to the top of the trading range, multiple times for Bitcoin here, the top of the trading range includes an SOS and LPS function before we start to really have these big breakouts. And here, if you notice, look how small that SOS and LPS function was here at the top of the previous trading range at around 19,000. After that, we went, boom, we continued onwards and upwards. So I have a feeling that this is what's going to happen for Bitcoin, but it would be super awesome if we saw a nice LPS and reaccumulation SOS and LPS phase here for Bitcoin, but it's not always clear that we're going to get that. So don't rely on it. Don't rely on Bitcoin's price coming down to fill the range here. Effectively, once we're up this high, we just continue onwards and upwards. A few reasons for that, but to continue that thought process, we'll go back to Avalanche. Avalanche is at the top of its box. It's broken out. It's retested. And this is what I would like to see with Bitcoin, is that once we break through the top of the box, we get a retest, but that's not always the case. Avalanche is likely going to continue onwards and upwards to $80 because we have new all-time highs for Fetch basically on a daily basis for the last few weeks. I suspect many of the other assets are not far off. Near had a nice run the other day too. I thought this would be fun to point out, is you can notice the accumulation range taking place here near the bottom of the range, and also something that you could make an argument for actually being another scale invariant function of the range, which is in fact that you have the top of the trading range here and the bottom of the trading range here. So two trading ranges, the bigger, longer macro story plus a smaller intermediary range, which represented probably the best place to be buying. And we've seen that a few times with Bitcoin. Here, I would also make an argument that what you're witnessing is a traditional cup and handle within the trading range. So I suspect that Near is going to get further of a breakout here after a kind of an SOS LPS for the finality of this giant cup and handle, effectively. And oddly enough, that's actually what Bitcoin had done in its past too. I'm not sure if y'all remember this, but you can go back and look at my videos in Bitcoin 2017. And I was like, wow, ladies and gentlemen, this looks like a giant multi-year cup and handle like this, bang, bang. I think we're going to break out. And we did. We went very quickly from, wow, is this, yeah. Here we were making videos of Bitcoin on YouTube in 2016. The amount of change that we've seen in the Bitcoin cycle just since this YouTube channel. Okay, so where does that lead us next? Everything's bullish still, basically. Solana also onto its daily. Remember, we are in a new, what appears to be a new reaccumulation range right at the top of the TR for Solana as well. You can see the bottom of its trading range. Again, here is a kind of a good example. The backup and LPS and SOS and LPS phases right at the top of the trading range here didn't take long before it exploded. Now, every asset is different. This looks much more similar to where Avalanche is, the top of this, but this is already well outside of its box. So again, you could make some type of argument that this is actually the top of the trading range here for Solana. The only thing that would argue against that is that your primary support is clearly indicated by the buying and selling of supply here, your shakeout or spring here, and a secondary test here. Whereas here we don't have the big supply signature. But again, it's interesting to me that right now what it looks like we're seeing is there's a serious amount of resistance here and right at the bottom here to make this potentially like a really big trading range, so that you have this is like almost like an automatic rally to the first primary support, potentially a shakeout here, then your spring, then your test. Not the greatest visual story here, obviously, but it also would highlight, again, the other idea that we went over is that often you will see these very bottom of the trading range, inside of a trading range, take place, especially when you're dealing with a few hundred years. I know that sounds super meta, but if you've been here long enough, you've been doing your homework, you know exactly what I mean. And that's what it looks like. It looks like we were actually in the kind of final SOS LPS phases for a much larger trading range for Solana. So that will be interesting to see again, because Fetch is in new all-time highs every day. If you look at what happened with Fetch here as another great example, you're dealing with a very, very large trading range effectively, right? So from the very top of the range here to the very bottom of the range. And we actually see multiple accumulation, distribution, accumulation, reaccumulation schematics take place with what is inside of potentially this larger trading range. And notice how that as soon as we checked the previous all-time high of the trading range, we just went bananas, right? Fetch yesterday alone, this is actually a pretty interesting story from the liquidity sweep. Fetch yesterday alone, during that big drop in Bitcoin, from wick high to wick low, dropped 30%. But within, let's see, a few hours, 23 hours, you are 76% up from that previous wick low. So that's an incredible amount of movement in a very short period of time. And again, this is because we are in a bull market. If we weren't in a bull market, you wouldn't be seeing stuff like this. It just wouldn't... You wouldn't have this level of strength come in the market. So that's, the last thing I wanted to look at was Uniswap today. Uniswap also another really great play. Once they dropped the news that they were going to be including profits, this became a very interesting position. And as you can see, from the moment we dropped that thought process, it's up already 60 to 70%. I should have been paying more attention here, but that trade moved very, very quickly. Can we actually go back to Uniswap? There we go. Yeah, so Uniswap already outside of its trading range as well, hitting that previous chunk of resistance and supply. Again, I would draw it like this, horizontal trading range here, basically a middle of the box SOS and LPS. But there's, again, room to make an argument that there's actually a smaller trading range that took place here versus this bigger trading range, I think, which we're seeing starting to fulfill itself now. And again, that's what happened in Fetch. Fetch was kind of one of the leaders of the market. Same with Link. Actually, we'll close out with Link today. If you look at Link's bigger story here, you could make an argument that we are actually in just the final stages of what you could, again, you could make an argument that this is a kind of a cup and handle where you see giant downswing, very smooth bottom of the cup, chink, chink, boom, and a massive breakout for Link is probably right around the corner, based off everything else that we've seen in the market. So Link was usually not that far behind. Fetch definitely almost led everything this market. It's up 20x in the last 12 months alone. It's incredible strength there. So keep an eye on the markets. Don't get washed out. I know it's a difficult one. I myself also have that same emotional experience. So just enjoy the ride. YouTube's asking me to prove that I am me before I can even look at the chat right now. What is this, YouTube? One sec here, ladies and gentlemen, while I click on some buttons in the background. Hopefully let me stream back. What? It's asking me to check it on my phone too. Well, I appreciate the security, I guess. That's what we'll say. Hey, there we go. We're back. But not today. Let's just say we know we're going to all-time highs. That's for sure. Near's popping. Yeah, Near's had some serious strength in the last few days as well. So again, all this strength in the market is just a lot of fun. Hopefully you've already found your positions and you're enjoying the ride. I'm gonna leave it at that. Jump off for the rest of the day. Hopefully go and be back online with you guys again for another episode soon. Thank you for all the support. Steve with the Arcane Bear. We'll see you on the next episode. Ciao.